Friday, July 16, 1915, dawned bright and clear on Treasure Island. In addition to the heavy heat that often hangs over the valley of the Delaware, there was something else in the air. It was an almost indescribable feeling of expectancy and mystery.
My brothers, welcome. I am Tim Repper, the 2015 Lodge Chief of the Unami Lodge One. Thank you for joining us for the Unami Lodge Centennial celebration. While everyone across the country is celebrating the 100th anniversary of the Order of the Arrow, this year we are also blessed to be celebrating the 100th anniversary of Unami Lodge, our lodge, the first lodge in this amazing organization. And while we can't physically be at Treasure Island for this monumentous occasion, I hope you have caught a little bit of Treasure Island spirit today. We hosted a great conclave this weekend, and I am hoping you are all enjoying the special events and activities this afternoon as we gather now to reflect the past while hoping that each of you, as you leave camp tonight, will also be thinking of our future. As I look around the dining hall tonight, I have to believe that 100 years ago, when Dr. Urner Goodman and the rest of the team that planned for the birth of the order would be pretty happy by the way things turned out and their dreams have come to life. We have a full program ahead of us, and I'd like to begin by welcoming many guests who have joined us for this special event. Please hold all of your applause until the end. We have Mark Chaluti, the National OA Committee. Feel free to wave. We have Ken Davis, National OA Committee. Mark Dukeman, the National OA Director Designee. Alex Call, the National OA Chief. Donnie Stevens, the National OA Vice Chief. Bob Black, the Northeast Region OA Chairman. Matt Bell, the Northeast Region OA Chief. Jeffrey Astor, Unami Lodge's Advisor. John Bickle, Unami Lodge's Staff Advisor. Paul Bowman, Unami Lodge's 100th Anniversary Chairman. Dr. David Serkin, 100th Anniversary Advisor. Dan Templar, Cradle of Liberty Council's Scout Executive and Unami Lodge's Supreme Chief of the Fire. Chris Brenner, Resica Falls Camp Director. And now, the past Lodge Chiefs of Unami Lodge and Delmont Lodge. Can you please stand and remain standing in order to be recognized? Alan Geller, 1974 Unami Lodge Chief. Philip Hittner, 1975 Unami Lodge Chief. Dr. Jeffrey Steinberg, 1978 Unami Lodge Chief. Robert Johnson, 1978 Delmont Lodge Chief. Dr. David Serkin, 1981 Unami Lodge Chief. Robert Johnson, 1978 Unami Lodge Chief. God, I'm reading this wrong. Sorry. Timothy Kelly, 1982 Unami Lodge Chief. Mark Chaluti, 1986 Unami Lodge Chief.
Time out. Mike Coyne, come on out. 1983 Lodge Chief.
David King, 1990 Unami Lodge Chief. Jeffrey Astor, 1992 Unami Lodge Chief. Brian Fowler, 1993 Unami Lodge Chief. David Fitzgerald, 1994 to 1995 Delmont Lodge Chief. Jason Shepard, 1996 Unami Lodge Chief. Dr. Ryan P. Edmonds, 2002 to 2003 Unami Lodge Chief. John Bickle, 2005 to 2008 Unami Lodge Chief. Brian Johnson, 2009 Unami Lodge Chief. Jeremy Slocum, 2010's Unami Lodge Chief. Kyle Hollowell, 2011's Unami Lodge Chief. I would like to now turn the program over to the Master of Ceremonies for this evening, our 1986 Unami Lodge Chief and a current member of the National OA Committee, Mark Chaluti.
Well, happy birthday, Unami Lodge, huh? Let's give a big round of applause to our chief. How great it is for all of us to gather to celebrate this great occasion, 100 years after a couple young guys had a dream, a vision, an idea, and I am pretty confident that they would be so pleased with how these last 100 years have turned out. When we look across the room and think about the thousands and thousands of young men who became leaders in this world, and we think about those adults who have helped those youth along the way, it has been an incredible journey for so many of us, and it's great to see so many people here tonight that we haven't seen in a long time. Our chief mentioned that, of course, we couldn't have the celebration at Treasure Island, but there is no way we could forget about our birthplace. And we wanted to do our best to bring some of the birthplace here to you tonight. We are very fortunate to have a member of our lodge, a long time member of our lodge named Butts McMillan. Butts first camped at Treasure Island in 1927, was inducted into Unami Lodge in 1928, and thankfully, he was along with us until the age of 97 when he passed away. In 2004, the National Order of the Arrow Committee realized the value that Butts McMillan had in the stories that he could tell that could not be replaced. And so we sat Butts down in the Philadelphia Council Scout headquarters and just had a candid conversation with him. In this first clip, we'd like to flash back to Butts and have him talk about his thoughts on Treasure Island.
Hello, I'm John Butts McMillan from the Unami Lodge One, the Cradle of Liberty Council. In case you haven't heard much about that, that's the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania area. I appreciate the invitation to say a few words and a little bit of the history about what is reputed to be the first council camp in the country. Treasure Island, the birthplace of the Order of the Arrow in 1915, is located in the middle of the Delaware River between Pennsylvania and New Jersey. This is what we call the beautiful Delaware Valley. It seems like the hills in Jersey and Pennsylvania come right up out of the water and rise. Now, this was the stamping ground of the Delaware Indians, known as the Lenni Lenape. The traditions and ceremonies of the Order of the Arrow are based on the culture of the American Indian, specifically the Delawares. They're right from this area here. Treasure Island itself, let me tell you, there's a certain mystique about Treasure Island. Now, maybe some people have heard this, and it's called the Treasure Island Spirit. Now, people ask me, they say, Butts, what is this Treasure Island Spirit that I hear about? And I say, well, I can't answer that. There's no way of defining it. I can't describe it. It's never been written. I said, you have to experience it. And the way you experience it is to camp on Treasure Island a few times, and you become imbued with the Treasure Island spirit. And once you got it, you got it.
Please prepare yourself for grace in the manner in which you are accustomed to.
Dear Lord, thank you for allowing us all to gather here today. Please bless the food in which we are about to take into our bodies and the hands who have worked so long to prepare it. Lord, we thank you for the fellowship that we have all enjoyed so far and for allowing us to come together to have this celebration. And please, Lord, let us carry the spirit which has kindled so much within us and within our brotherhood forward as we move on in our lives. Amen.
Thank you. Enjoy your dinner, and we'll be back with more program shortly. Towards the very front of the room, for a Kodak moment for sure, we have our past lodge chiefs, our national chief and vice chief, our region chief, the ceremonial cutting of the cake. So guys, if we can get you ready, and I'll do an official 1, 2, 3. Somebody, Jeffrey, looks like you got the official knife there. And after the cake is cut, if you'll stay in your seats, we're gonna have all of these guys serve you your cake. So when they do that, you can thank them for their service and the cake. So Jeffrey and whoever else has a knife, 1, 2, 3. That would mean cut on 3. 3 again. All right, it's gonna take a few minutes for the cakes to get cut, but I want to get our program started really quickly. Many of you have seen and been admiring this map of Treasure Island that is hanging above the dining hall here, just as it hung above the dining hall in Treasure Island. That map is not just a painting of the island. That map has a history and a story behind it.
Anniversary. Come on now. So listen, my name is Dan Templer. I am the new Scout Executive for the Royal Liberty Council and the Supreme Chief of the Fire for the Unami Lodge. And I got to tell you, like many of you, I'm coming off a tremendous weekend. This conclave was just incredibly exciting and engaging, and just couldn't be prouder of our Unami team that put this on and hosted this event. So me and almost 600 of my closest friends had an outstanding weekend together. So a little bit this afternoon, I had an opportunity to go down by the Native American village. If you haven't been down there, you need to go down there and take a look at it. And I just walked up and down the shores of the creek, and I was reflecting on some of the things that we had seen and done this weekend. And it dawned on me that pretty much most of my life, people have been telling me I'm a lucky son of a gun, and things always just seem to kind of happen my way and go my way. And I thought, boy, they sure are right. And not only was I just selected to be the Scout Executive of the best darn Boy Scout Council in the country, it just so happened to be 2 weeks before the Centennial celebration began. So not only do I get to be the Scout Executive, I get to be the Supreme Chief of the Fire for the best lodge, the Unami Lodge One. That's right, that's right. There you go. So I thought a little bit more, and I walked up and down the creek a little bit more, and I realized, man, I'm not lucky because I get to celebrate the 100th anniversary. I'm lucky because I get to be a huge piece of creating the next 100 years of our Order of the Arrow. And then it dawned on me, I'm not the only one that's lucky. Everyone wearing one of these white sashes, all of you in the room tonight, are sharing that luck. Each and every one of us has got an opportunity to shape what cheerful service and brotherhood are going to look like for the next 100 years of scouting. So think about that as we celebrate, and hope everyone will take it upon themselves, make it a personal mission to figure out what kind of a role you can play in shaping the next 100 years. Because rest assured, the Boy Scouts of America and our country and our society needs us to step up and make that happen. So thank you very much. Congratulations.
Thank you, Dan, and we are thrilled to have you here as our Supreme Chief of the Fire. I'd now like to welcome to the podium, and this is really special. You know, it's we've been blessed on anniversaries in the past to have the National Chief join us, and today is one of those occasions. Coming to us from Texas via New York,
I would like to introduce our National Chief, Alex Call.
Well, Mark, thank you, and brothers of Unami Lodge, ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for the opportunity to join you here as we celebrate the 100th anniversary of Unami Lodge #1. Mark said that you're blessed to have me, but the truth is I'm blessed to be here today because as an organization, we're indebted to your brothers who started a movement and sparked the flame that is the Order of the Arrow today. And so I'm so excited to be with you as you celebrate this momentous occasion in your history, and as we celebrate with you this year with the Centennial of the Order of the Arrow. Just as your Scout Executive mentioned, and many have shared earlier this evening, I hope that you'll take the excitement that's apparent here this afternoon and this evening with you back to your units, to your communities, and share the spirit of service that is the Order of the Arrow. Because that's the best thing that we can do as we celebrate the centuries of service that this 100 years mark, is share the spirit of service with other people. Thanks so much for the opportunity to join you. Mark, thank you. Thank you to the lead advisors and all of those involved in the Centennial celebration today, and safe travels to you as you return home.
Chief, thank you very much for being with us. I know it was a whirlwind day to get here, but we are so glad that you could be with us. How lucky are we that Dr. Urner Goodman, the camp director of Treasure Island, our camp, had this idea to create a brotherhood to recognize honored campers. And here we are 100 years later celebrating what a great idea that was, and all of the cheerful service and brotherhood that has happened over those last 100 years. I never had the chance to meet our founder. I was inducted in the summer of 1981, and unfortunately he passed away in March of 1980. But there are some folks here who have had the opportunity to spend some time with our founder, so I'd like to direct you back to the video screen to Butts McMillan, who's going to share some thoughts about his time in the early days of the Wimmocton Dink, and as he would affectionately call his friend Urner.
Well, I think with Urner Goodman, he was like a dynamo. I mean, even when his later years, when he was coming around then, even though you could tell he was getting up in his 80s there, but he still had a lot of it upstairs. But looking back, I mean, he had to be good. I mean, he was a scoutmaster here in Philadelphia, and he went on to national as program director. I think he was program director when he retired, but it seemed like everything he did with gusto. And when you talk to him, he'd walk up to a kid and, "You look like a good leader to me," you know, and that, which turned gray later on. But it was a landmark, and when Goodman showed up, everybody else showed up too. He was a real leader.
We also wanted to make sure, you know, even though he could not be here, of course, today, but that we shared some words from our founder that were delivered some 50 years ago. But as you listen to them, I think you will see the passion that he shares in his voice, the excitement he had about the growth of the Order of the Arrow, and just how pertinent those words that he shared some 50 years ago are today. So we'd like to direct you back to the video screen for some words of our founder.
It is my great privilege to present to you now the honorary National Chief of the Order of the Arrow, our beloved founder, Dr. E. Urner Goodman.
Now, the Order of the Arrow was founded, as you know, I think, upon an old Indian camping ground. But the original planning for the Order, the original planning was not done there. You know where it was done? It was done in Independence Hall, where the Declaration of Independence and the Charter of our Liberties was developed, where our country was born, this great democratic republic. That's where the order was really born. So naturally we stress the principle of democracy in the order. Don't overlook the fact that our great democratic principles is going to be subject to attack during the years ahead in this promised land. In fact, my brothers, listen to your founder for just this minute. There was great danger in founding the Order of the Arrow, in picking out certain select men in a troop or a unit and setting them apart. Let me mention just three great dangers that we have to guard against. There's the danger of the clique, a little self-contained group of people better than thou, who look down the nose at the other fellow, who, like the small kids, say, I got something you ain't got. That sort of a spirit, you know. I remember two small boys when our own family were younger, two small boys, neighbor boys, about ages 7 and 5, that got a new bicycle, just one bicycle between them. And they did their best to ride that bicycle together. It wasn't a very successful demonstration. And finally, the older fella said to the littler boy, you know, if one of us would get off, I could ride better. And there's a danger, my brother, that we may also inherit that spirit. If we keep some of these guys out, look how much better we'd be. The danger of the clique, of exclusiveness. Heaven guard against that danger in the promised land. Then there's a danger of the oligarchy. You know from your medieval history, ancient history, what the oligarchy was. A few people in power in the lodge or in society. A few people in power. And that's no way to maintain a strong organization or a strong nation. Yet it's so easy to fall into that situation, and I hope heaven spares us that danger. And then there's the danger of the boss. The danger of the boss emerging to hazard our democracy, our democratic spirit. A dictator running the lodge or a dictator running the land. They're both of the same breed. And we've begun to rid the world of dictators, but they keep cropping up on us from time to time, don't they? If it isn't a Hitler or Mussolini, it's a Perón in South America. But on the other hand, let me put it positively, brothers. May we cherish the democratic spirit positively in the selection of our members, in accenting the importance of each individual member, not letting none be lost in the crowd. How I would love to have been able to do that more perfectly in this gathering. But nothing gave me greater pleasure than to talk to each individual member that I had a chance to run up against. Learning in youth, in days of youth, how to manage your own affairs more expertly by actual experience. There was a country schoolmarm up there where I live who was trying to teach her boys and girls that idea of expressing themselves fully and in description. She said, now, boys and girls, I want you to imagine that you were trying to describe a horse to an Eskimo boy that never saw a horse. How would you do it? One kid put up his hand. He said, I would say a horse is an animal with a leg at each corner, and sat down. Another kid got up and said a horse is an animal with long hair at each end, and he sat down. And a little girl with an eye to beauty said a horse is white or black or brown. But the kid kept waving his hand back in the rear row, and finally she came to him. And she said, well, Johnny, what would you say? He said, I would say, come here, little Eskimo boy, and I'll show you a horse. When some, what's the name that they use now, egghead, says to me, what do you mean about teaching young men to run their own affairs. I'll say to my brother, the egghead, come to Bloomington with me, or its equivalent, and I'll show you young men running their own affairs and running it to the Queen's taste. Let's remember that as we carry on with the democratic spirit. Oh, it's a precious thing, this spirit of democracy which is ours. Take it with you, my brothers, into the promised land that lies ahead, and may God bless you all.
It's now my pleasure to introduce to you somebody who did have the opportunity to spend some time with our founder on several different occasions. You know, part of what we talk about in the Order of the Arrow is looking up to people, being mentors, and mentoring younger people, being a role model, the kind of people you want to follow. My first summer camp at Treasure Island, the program director was a guy named Alan Geller, our 1974 lodge chief, and I was a little kid, and a guy like Alan was as large as life. And he ran such a great camp and certainly showed you a great example of the life that we're supposed to lead. And it's now my pleasure to introduce our past lodge chief, past Treasure Island camp director, my good friend, Alan Geller.
Good evening. Can you hear in the back? My pleasure to talk a little bit about Urner Goodman. Quite an opportunity to spend time with him. Before I begin, let me digress for 30 seconds. I want to point out to the Lodge Chief Tim, your officers, and the members of Unami Lodge that as a has-been, as a former Lodge Chief, often we worry when I commiserate with my friends, what's the future of the Order? Will Unami be Unami the way we knew it and loved it? And I just want to assure you, based on the experience I had this weekend, we have no doubt. You guys did a fantastic job. In 1911, Urner Goodman began his association with scouting as the scoutmaster of Troop 1 in Philadelphia. With the spring of 1915, he became a full-time scouting professional and the camp director of Treasure Island, the Philadelphia Council's camp established in 1913. It was that summer at TI that the Wimaktatig, the Brotherhood of Cheerful Service, was founded by Dr. Goodman and Carol Edson, his camp assistant. By 1917, he became the scout executive in Philadelphia and remained there, except for a short stint during World War I, until 1927, when he took the same position in Chicago. In 1931, he became the National Program Director for the Boy Scouts of America, reporting directly to Chief Scout Executive James E. West. Dr. Goodman was responsible for professional and volunteer training, public relations, and program development. The Cub Scouting and Explorer programs were started under his leadership. He also oversaw the publication of the Scout Handbook, the Scoutmaster Handbook, and the Field Book. In 1937, he was responsible for the first National Jamboree, which brought 25,000 scouts and scouters to Washington, D.C. Let me share an insight into the man. Referring to the Nazi Kristallnacht, a rampage against the Jews in Germany in 1938, Goodman wrote shortly afterwards, "The program of persecution has stirred up in our hearts and minds as nothing else that has happened before has done. It has furnished the impetus of a wave of resentment against the evil, but more than that, for a surge of satisfaction and thanksgiving concerning our own happier state under democracy." Under his guidance, the Scout effort to fight World War II was launched. This included U.S. bond drives, victory gardens, air raid poster placement, and assistance in civil defense by the Boy Scouts of America. In 1951, he ended his professional scouting career after 36 years. He was given the title of National Field Scout Commissioner to continue his work to scouting on the national level as a layman. I met Urner Goodman for the first time at the 1971 Area 3A meeting, which we now call a section conclave. While signing my sash, he spoke about his life in Philadelphia, and I remarked how I had an aunt who lived in Tioga, the same neighborhood where he resided. If you can imagine the line of most of the meeting's delegates seeking to meet the founder, you know the pressure that was placed to move the line along. But this was not to be. Dr. Goodman focused on each individual. He'd look them in the eye and say something like, and I'll botch it, I assure you, "My brother, where are you from?" Every person who he met. Our next meeting was in 1973 at the National Order of the Arrow Conference in Santa Barbara, California. To my utter amazement and delight, Delmont Lodge chartered a jet to fly delegates from southeastern Pennsylvania to the conference. Unami was able to hitch a ride. Yes, a plane full of scouts and scouters in their uniforms, shorts and all, who ended up serving the stewardess while everyone laughed and joked and flirted with the ladies, all overwhelmed assuredly by teenage attention. Barry Kaufman, are you here? Do you remember? I do. Okay. Fortunately, at the National Jamboree earlier that summer, I worked with the chief of the host lodge, the chief of the Santa Barbara Council. Upon meeting my friend, my Jamboree friend, I asked if he knew anything about the traditional meeting of the Unami Lodge delegation with the founder. He said he didn't, but would check for me. It's a good thing he was willing and was connected, because I hadn't heard of the traditional meeting either. Anyway, it was arranged that our delegation would meet Dr. Goodman and Colonel Edson. The day arrived. Our small delegation was ushered into the room with just the founders and a couple of minders. We had died and gone to heaven. The session began with Dr. Goodman saying, "Unami, I've heard of that lodge." We reminisced about Philadelphia, Treasure Island, the founding of Unami Lodge, whether there was a mule that died that first summer or not, doesn't matter. And we didn't have to get in line to sign our sash. The third and final anecdote I'd like to share occurred at the Unami 60th anniversary celebration at Treasure Island. My best friend Phil Hittner, then chief, asked me to be the chair event. Staffing the celebration was not easy because the camp had been closed for several years. We had to do a lot of basic maintenance to get the camp ready for the hundreds of guests coming to the celebration, all being done while most of us were working on the camp art staff. George Keller, the 1932 chief, was collecting Dr. Goodman at the airport. With George involved, I knew everything would go smoothly. I was running around that day, working on logistics, getting ready for the evening's reenactment of the original ceremony. It was a typical summer day on the island, hot and sticky. I was crossing the clearing outside of the dining hall, dripping with sweat and dirt, and I saw a group of people. I almost ran past him, and there he was, in the midst of a small crowd, being his usual gracious and thoughtful self. I was introduced to the gentleman and thought to myself, I hope he's not offended by my lame mustache. You see, I was playing Goodman in the ceremony later that night. You can ask David Sirkin about the obligatory pictures that were taken at the close of that ceremony. Quite a spectacle. They're still around today. They are. Oh, and I have to, for the record, say, Dave got the job because he was a good scout, a great guy, but most importantly, he was the only one who fit in the uniform. Later, after the ceremony, there was a social, and there we had the opportunity to see Dr. Goodman attack the cake, which made for a very humorous picture. To conclude, it was my great honor and pleasure to have corresponded with and met Dr. Goodman. He was inspirational, thoughtful, gracious, and one of the pivotal leaders of Scouting. So much of what we do in Scouting and in the Order of the Arrow, things we take for granted, came from the mind and hard work of this great man. The best way to end this reminiscence is to quote the man as he summarized what he felt the order signified. This, by the way, is in your souvenir booklet. The Order of the Arrow is a thing of the spirit rather than mechanics. Organization, operational procedures, and paraphernalia are necessary in any large and growing movement. But they are not what count in the end. The things of the spirit count. Brotherhood. In a day when there is too much hatred at home and abroad. Cheerfulness. In a day when the pessimists have the floor. Service. In a day when millions are interested only in getting or grasping rather than giving. These are the spirit, blessed of God, the great divine spirit. Should I reference it? Okay. Yeah, thanks. We're about to sing the Treasure Island song. I'm shaking. I've done it many times, although it's been a while, honestly. But I can't help but think this may be one of the last times it will be done in a large gathering. The song can be found in your souvenir booklet. Hard to tell you where. Towards the end, right below the Chiefs of Unami Lodge. And it's also in the your small program that you're wearing. Anyone who had the good fortune and pleasure to serve on the Treasure Island's camp staff, please stand. You see that, please stand? Absolutely. Even volunteers. Remain standing, please.
Dear old treasure
Wow, please be seated. These memories that so many of us have had, and to make sure, for those of you who never had the opportunity to be a camper at Treasure Island, we hope that you will experience and catch the Treasure Island spirit by being a part of our program tonight. I'd like to digress for a minute because there are a lot of people who helped make this event and this dinner happen. One group, which is a very large group that's been working hard all weekend for the Conclave and to prepare a pretty spectacular dinner tonight. I'd like to ask all our cooks and food crew, led by our 1983 Lodge Chief, Mike Coyne, to please come out and be recognized. I would also like to thank what all of the youth that served on this 100th anniversary celebration committee, led by our Lodge Chief and the event chairman, Paul. If you guys would all stand, the whole youth, every youth that worked on the staff and committee for this event. I know when we first started talking about this event, probably 2 years ago, 18 months ago, I'm not sure you had any idea what a lot of us were talking about. But I sure hope that each one of you, as you go to bed tonight, I know you're going to be tired, but I really hope that you recognize the significant impact that each one of you has made and the part of history that you will take home with you when you leave tonight. I'd also like to ask the adults involved on the committee and staff, led by the event advisor, Dr. David Sirkin, to please rise. Let's give a warm round of applause here as well. Another guest we're very fortunate to have with us is our National Vice Chief. He might have had a long ride to get here, but at least he's got a shorter ride home. Hailing from the great state of Pennsylvania, Unami Lodge, our own section, thrilled to see Donnie Stevens serve as our National Vice Chief. Donnie.
So as National Vice Chief, I have the pleasure of traveling the country and meeting so many fantastic airmen like yourselves. And it's so refreshing and it's so nice to come back home here to Section 95B to be with all of you tonight for the celebration of not only the 100th anniversary of the Order of the Arrow, but also the 100th anniversary of Unami Lodge. It's an honor to be here among Unami Lodge members, both old and new, the old representing the traditions, the cheerfulness of the past, and the new representing the future of the Order of the Arrow. Now, I know I relate to some of those new members in saying that I myself have never been to Treasure Island. And it seems like such a great and such an honored place to have been able to camp and to experience themselves. And I'm also happy to say that I see the same passion and the same drive alive on Treasure Island 100 years ago, alive and well here in this room tenfold, and out there nationally in an organization of 170,000 members. So thank you so much for your passion and dedication to the Order of the Arrow. But I will say one thing. The enthusiasm in this room tonight, it needs to continue. We need to make sure that 100 more years of this organization happen as great and as well as they did in the past 100. I look forward to meeting you each on the Scouting Trail. And again, thank you so much for all the service that you have done for the Order of the Arrow, and have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Awesome. Donnie, thanks so much for being with us. So how do we try to put an exclamation point on the weekends that we've all just experienced? I'm not sure it's possible, but I'm going to try and give you a few thoughts that we'd like for you to leave with tonight. 100 years ago, on July 16th, 2 men and the team that they had working with them created something special. Each one of us has benefited from that in some way. be it the skills that we learned that have helped us later in life, be it the lifelong friendships that we have formed with people, some of whom we met when we were teenagers, be it the memories that nobody can ever take away from us. The experiences that we had as officers in the Order of the Arrow, as members of the Order of the Arrow, are what has made this world a better place. I think back to the millions of hours of cheerful service that Arrowmen have performed to make this country a better place. Probably not something that our founders ever imagined would be happening as a result of this little organization that they wanted to form to recognize scouts for doing their best each day in their troop. 100 years is a long time, and we've had a lot of people that have walked the trail in Unami Lodge and in lodges all across the country that have helped to get us through these first 100 years. I would like to ask every adult that's in the room to please stand up. For the youth that are here with us, I want you to please take a look at these men. We have some people here that have been inducted for very short times. We have some people that have been members of the Order of the Arrow for a long time. And I will guarantee you that each one of them has done something to get us through these first 100 years of the Order of the Arrow. And for that, we thank each and every one of you. Please be seated. And now I'd like to ask each youth under the age of 21 to please stand and rise. We talk so much in our order about leaving a legacy. We talk about what do we want to be remembered for. I don't expect any of you at this age has ever thought about what will my legacy be. That's not something we would think about. But I will tell you, each one of us that just was up and is sitting down, that walked the trails, that maybe some of you are just beginning, because I know there are people here that were just inducted 2 weeks ago. Each one of us has done something to leave a legacy for the first 100 years. The Order of the Arrow is heading into our second century of service. And as I take a good look around the room, I'm wondering which one of you is going to leave a legacy, and what will your legacy be? Some leave big legacies, some do small things that not that many people notice. It doesn't matter whether it's big or small. Each one of you, we need you to lead the organization forward into our second century of service. I promise you, the Order of the Arrow is one of the best organizations that you will ever have the opportunity to be blessed to be a part of, and I beg each and every one of you to take advantage of that opportunity. Please be seated. As we start to wrap up our event, I would like each of us to sit quietly and listen to words that we heard long ago. Some of us may not have heard them for a long time. Some of us may have heard them just 2 weeks ago or very recently in a ceremony. But listen to that legend, the legend of the Order of the Arrow, and think back on the impact it has made for each of us.
Every great tradition has a beginning. This one began in Philadelphia. It was a day of an indescribable feeling of expectancy and mystery that grew more palpable than the humidity that hangs over the valley of the Delaware River in summer. A scouting movement that would spark a legacy, affecting countless millions, would begin on this date.
Goodman and Edson had the desire to find a way to emphasize the ideals of scouting. And so at the ages of only 24, they endeavored to design a novel camp society, an order that would recognize those that best exemplified the scout oath and law in their daily lives. Camp Director Goodman was the chief of the fire. Edson was the sergeant. On this night, they would initiate the first ceremony of the Wamakdindink Wingolausik with the Hemaway.
Robert Craig and Gilpin Allen, please step forward.
The first two scouts, elected by their troops, prepared to be inducted.
Each candidate must perform an hour tests. The tests are designed to demonstrate brotherhood and service. First, you need to scale the steep elevation to reach the brotherhood tree.
The first inductees forged through the darkness, but help was never far away.
After, you will attempt to encircle the tree in brotherhood.
But here, you will never be alone.
Finally, you must break this bundle of sticks.
Only with the assistance of the chief of the fire did this become a simple task.
In showing the first inductees the importance of working together, the spirit of service, united, they began the legacy of the Order of the Arrow.
Upon our induction, each one of us stood before Alawatsikima with hands raised in the scout sign and took a solemn obligation. As we close this celebration of our first 100 years and embark upon a second century of service, I'd like each Arrowman to rise and take that pledge again. I, David Lee, do hereby promise on my honor as a scout that I will always and faithfully observe and preserve the traditions of the Order of the Arrow. We mock the name, we elastic, with the Hemaway. I will always regard the ties of brotherhood and the Order of the Arrow as lasting, and will seek to preserve the traditional spirit, even in the midst of irksome tasks and weighty responsibilities, and will endeavor, so far as in my power lies, to be unselfish in service and devotion to the welfare of others. And now, it is only fitting, as we close our program tonight, that we join hands around our tables and sing the song of our order. Upon its completion, please sit and remain seated for dismissal.
fun things was always different dismissals of the dining hall at every meal, and we're going to do that tonight. But what we need you to do after we do the dismissals, come back and clean your stuff up, please. And we'd also, I'd like to make, you know, it's about 6:25 now. We need to really be leaving camp by 7 o'clock. I know that doesn't allow a lot of time, but really take the little bit of time that we have and treasure the rest of it, because who knows the next time we will be together, and who knows the next time we're together, who's not going to be with us. So these are special, special moments. Let's treasure that. And with that, I would like to go into our dismissals, starting by asking anybody who's been a member of the Order of the Arrow for 50 years or more, please rise. Let's clap for them, and guys, you can exit the dining hall. And maybe 50 years, you guys don't have to come back and clean the tables. Anybody who's been a member of the Order of the Arrow for 40 years or more, between 40 and 50, please rise. Anybody who's been a member of the Order of the Arrow between 30 and 39 years, please rise. Thank you, and you are dismissed. Anybody who's been a member of the Order of the Arrow for 25 to 29 years, you are dismissed. Please rise. Anybody who's been a member of the Order of the Arrow for 20 to 24 years. Now I expect a big group. Anybody who's been a member, yeah. Tom, you're in trouble. You're cleaning the table, right? Anybody who's been a member of the Order of the Arrow for 10 to 19 years, please rise and exit the dining hall. Anybody who's been a member of the Order of the Arrow for 5 to 9 years.